going to go ahead and get started. We at Bara Agency have been working on this for a long time. We've been doing mind maps for teams and consulting for a minute. A little bit about me. I'm Josh Freid. I'm the principal of real estate at Bara Agency. I'm here with Lauren Brown, who's one of our systems architects, as well as Jamie Bledsoe, who's in here somewhere. I don't know if her camera's on or not, who is also a systems architect. Today, we are going to start our Blueprint to Scale webinar series. It's going to start with today. We're going to show you how to create a mind map and understand your tech stack to get a lot more clarity. In part two, we'll be kind of talking about how to prioritize those projects and what projects to work on first to enhance your systems. And then in week three, we're going to talk about getting all of the ROI out of your tech stack. So making sure that you're getting all of the juice out of the fruit that are the platforms that you're using on a daily basis. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. If you've ever been asked about your tech stack, I know there's a lot of people that are current clients of ours in the chat, or maybe past clients, or hopefully future clients. But if you've ever been asked about your tech stack and you have had no idea, go ahead and throw this little, if you can find this emoji, it was maybe a tough one to use, but this is something that a lot of teams struggle with. They have it in maybe a Google Doc, or they have it in their brains a lot of the time of what's going on, which can cause a lot of chaos. And so that was a similar situation that we had at Bara Agency with our clients. At first, our goal at Bara Agency, and it still to this day, is to bring humans back to the human side of business. And the way that we were doing that is by streamlining processes, eliminating the mundane, as well as just eliminating any barriers to scale that had to do with technology. And doing that without a clear blueprint of what a company is and how they operate internally, that was really difficult for us, because we would find that we were creating more tech debt than we were eliminating. We would find that without a clear blueprint, we were creating overlapping automations that would conflict with each other, and then realizing that there's some pieces of the processes that we were streamlining that we would have to completely undo to account for new processes that we were putting in place. And so that's when we came up with the idea of mind maps. And I don't want to take credit for the idea of mind maps. That's when we instilled it into our company and our clients. And that benefited us not only internally, but also benefited our clients as well. And so those principles we've been gathering over the last 5 years now to kind of put together. And now at this point, this is something that is very easy to share. A lot of what we do is extremely complex in terms of development and building these AI implementations and automations. But this is a very digestible part that can be very helpful, even for teams that don't have a technology department, that just want to streamline their processes. And so we'll go to the next slide here. This is just setting yourself up for success when you're working on this. It's very important to cut out noise. This is the entire blueprint for your company. This is what is going to drive your team's growth, drive your team's ability to do what they do on a daily basis. And so it's really important to, when you're working on this yourself, cut out all distractions, set your intentions, and then get feedback from your team as well. There's a lot of times that a lot of these processes are going to be in the hands of the agents. They're going to be in the hands of the transaction managers. They're going to be in the hands of your admin staff or your VAs. And so it's really important that they have input on this. And so the cost of chaos, I don't even know why I put this slide in here, but weekly repetitions, zero connection clarity, and unlimited tech debt. That's what's happening if you're not connected. And so we're building your systems North Star. It's going to be a one-page blueprint. So you can get granular with it. And we do encourage that you have processes within the process. But what we're talking about today is the very high level macro view of your systems that are going to bring you that clarity and give you a project roadmap for the future and building out what those processes are. By the end of this hour, you'll be able to walk away with just a very practical framework on how to build a mind map, as well as I do have a really cool tool. I emailed it to you guys yesterday. We developed essentially a tool that will help you put together what's in your tech stack, which will kind of kickstart the ability to start the mind map. And you'll have a bunch of examples on that tool as well. So you can reference, okay, what maybe am I missing in this process? How can I be more clear here? So without further ado, there's 3 types of tools that you're going to be utilizing in these mind maps that we kind of categorize. And so the first one's communication. These are obviously Slack, email. A lot of CRMs use communication, whether it be internal or external with talking to your actual clients. And so categorizing them as such is really important so you understand what the overarching goal of it is. You can also have automation platforms. Again, there can be tools that are in multiple categories here with multiple types, right? So automation can be inside of your CRM. A lot of you guys are Follow Up Boss users. There's automations inside of your CRM that are automating your lead follow-up process. And those things are very important to understand that you have those in place. And then there's also execution. This is your brokerage compliance, your transaction management, your reporting platforms, and things that are helping your team actually execute on the communications that you're having with these clients and making sure that that transaction management is happening, or that recruitment is happening, or that the post-closing processes are happening. And so we'll kind of get into that here as well. This is, I think, the most important part of creating a mind map. And I'll show you a pretty clear visual of why I think so in the next one. The transaction mapping zones. So it's really difficult when you just look at your entire tech stack, right? You see your CRM, your transaction management, your brokerage compliance, your reporting, the emails that are being sent out, the like seller listing value propositions, right? Like HomeBot and Fellow. Like there's all these different things that are connected to your website. And if you look at it from a very grand scale, it's really intimidating. But if you split it up into very digestible zones of processes, it makes it a lot easier. So the 4 that I really like to cut this into is lead flow, which is how your leads are getting into your CRM, which doesn't sound very important, but if you don't have a proper lead flow and you don't have leads automated into your CRM, this gets really difficult, or at least a process of how they're manually getting into your CRM, you're losing leads. And as we all know, a lot of you guys pay for leads, which is, if you're missing those leads, that's not a good thing at all. So being able to map those out and understanding what your lead sources are and where these leads are actually coming from and how they're getting into your CRM to be followed up with, that's a whole zone of itself. The next zone is follow-up and appointment. And so a lot of this is happening inside of your CRM. Again, a lot of you guys are in Boomtown and Sierra and Follow-Up Boss. And so that's easily able to be set up inside of those systems. So you're able to automatically, as a lead comes in, dependent on the lead source, figure out how you're going to be following up with these leads, whether it be an action plan or a drip campaign, or maybe you have a cool AI texting system built into your platform, whatever it is. Understanding how that process is happening from your agents following up with those leads all the way to setting and actually going to the appointment. That's its own zone in itself. The next one is my favorite because it is very standardized. Your states usually mandate this process, which makes it really helpful to be able to understand what needs to happen, right? There's a list of quote unquote required fields that are needed to actually move forward in every step of this. So it helps a lot with the standardization. And I find that this one is the most work, but it also is the easiest to set up because your TCs and your VAs and your agents they literally have to go to school about this. They have to go to real estate agent school to be able to understand this entire process, which makes it really easy to standardize and automate. And so listing management and transaction management are a zone in itself. And then everybody's favorite, which is the closing processes, making sure that that close is smooth, making sure that you are locking down that future referral, and giving your client that client care that your team is giving them. And that kind of goes in with the lead flow as well, because that cycle kind of just restarts. And so let me show you an example of starting with the small sections as well. So here's kind of a visual, and you'll understand this a little better once I show you an actual mind map that we've built for somebody. But this is the process. I mean, we've cut it every different way with, you know, hundreds of teams. And this is like the standard real estate process, right? So this is a good guide map for the majority of teams to use. You can see in lead intake how these lead sources are getting into the CRM. I did different dotted and types of lines here that are feeding into the CRM because there's so many different ways that lead sources are getting to the CRM. Follow up to appointment, what the follow up is based on the lead source. So you're going to treat Zillow leads differently than you treat Realtor.com leads. So you're going to treat SOI leads different than you treat Realtor.com leads. Dependent where the lead is coming from, there should be a different follow-up based on that. And there's a lot of teams that will help you with that as well, like Alina Key and Amplified Solutions that will work simply inside of your CRM to be able to help you with this. And guys, feel free to take screenshots or whatever of all this. I'm going to get into each of these zones to kind of help. So get your cameras ready, for lack of better terms there. So next one, listing transaction management. The only difference between the listing side and the buyer side, obviously, is the listing side takes a little more prep to get that listing on the market. So after you're having that listing appointment, a lot of the time agents are prepping a listing management package, or some teams have an entire listing management team. And there's a lot of processes that go into that with Canva, or putting stuff on the MLS, putting stuff in your reporting systems, making sure that everything is going where it needs to go so that listing can be taken care of. On the buyer side, it's a little easier, right? You're just looking for houses. So after you sign with that buyer, there's things that need to take place to go under contract and then eventually move to close. And so this is where your transaction management team and listing management team or listing marketing team are really taking shape. And then the closing process is, like we talked about, everything going closed, and then your post-transaction client care, client concierge processes there. So having those streamlined and understanding what's happening on every single closing that you have to guarantee a future referral or guarantee that client's going to work with you again in the future. That's super important to have mapped out. So what to document in each of these things. So we have tools, right? We have the platforms or your tech stack that you're actually using. That's going to be the most important part. That's what I built the tool that I'm going to send you guys entirely around, is what these tools are and what your tech stack is. And so putting that in your mind map is probably the first thing that you want to do. Understanding what each tool does is super important. Triggers and handoffs. So a lot of information that's flowing throughout your system is simply being handed off, right? So when a buyer or seller is being signed, that information is being handed off from the document to the listing or transaction management team. When a transaction goes under contract, that information is being handed off to the transaction management team to execute that transaction and make sure that everything that happens, inspection, closing dates, sign dates, everything that's going in there is happening. And so that is going from your agent's brain into your TC's brain. And if it's just brain to brain, there's a lot of human error that can happen there. So putting that all on paper and making sure that those processes are happening, because it's, again, the state mandates all of this. This is all standardized. Standardized is my favorite word. So making sure that these triggers and handoffs of, okay, when is that happening, is super important. And again, I have a pretty solid framework here of where those handoffs are happening each time. And so the lead intake, again, breaking these down, these can mean different things for different teams. Every team is different. And so this is, again, a great thing to screenshot and a great thing to use as an example, but you're going to have to dig deep to fully understand what it is specifically for your team. We don't build any of these mind maps out for any of our clients until we've had a sizable amount of time with them to actually build it out, because every team is so different. I can give you guys basic frameworks. I can give you these mind map examples. But at the end of the day, you and your team are the people that are going to be able to put this together for yourself. So for lead intake, the transaction map zone, the goal is to streamline how leads are captured and introduced into your customer relations management system, which is your CRM. So your FUBs, your Boomtowns, your Sierra Interactives, right? So good examples of this are lead sources that are happening or that you guys are signed up for, and how they're actually being pushed into your CRM. The handoffs are, I mean, there's a lot of referral systems that can take place too, whether that's you guys taking in leads and pushing those referrals off to other people, or that's referrals coming into you. A lot of teams work closely with lenders and escrow teams that are actively sending them leads. And so making sure that you are taking into account that process of, okay, I'm getting these leads on a consistent basis from this home loan group or this team over in California who's all of their clients are now trying to move to Arizona, right? So that's, again, that's something specific to your team that only they would understand. So I'll give you guys another second to take a picture of this or whatnot. And then we'll move on to follow up in appointments. Okay, so the goal here is to define agent strategies for lead engagement and efficient appointment scheduling. So making sure that those follow-up processes are getting you to the appointment, right? This is the one step after you get the lead, you want to set that appointment. Obviously with SOI, it's a little different, but if you have a new lead that you're getting from Zillow or you're getting from one of these lead sources, that is the one goal here, is to set the appointment. And so some key tools in that obviously are the CRM and the power dialers, and making sure that you have a very streamlined system that every appointment that you are actually setting is being tracked and everything is easy for the agent every single time, right? So they set the appointment. Our team, working with our clients, a lot of the times we'll set up automations for this where they set an appointment and it's creating that in their transaction management, it's creating that in the reporting system, and then in their CRM, it's making it a lot easier for their agents to just press submit with the information on the appointment, and then all of that's happening, right? Our clients in here know that. But there also is some more complex handoffs in this, right? The handoff here would be like an ISA handing off a lead or a lead appointment to an agent, right? How does that system work? How do you decide which agent gets which lead appointment? And so all those things, standardizing those are super important, because this is the first step to converting a lead. I'll give you guys another sec here with this one too. No, this is a little too big for the screen here. Cool. And guys, keep sending those questions in the chat there. I'm going to get to those right when I finish up here, and we're going to have a solid 30 minutes to talk about this, and I'll send a link to the tool I was talking about earlier. You guys can kind of get started on mapping out your tech stack. Okay, so my favorite one, listing and transaction management. The reason this is my favorite, I said earlier, is because it's all standardized. Like the language is standard passing this information. The agents just need to have a certain set of data that they are passing to the transaction management team, right? Every single time, that is what's happening, and getting that out of your head is so important. And so I guess the other reason that I think it's my favorite is the fact that it's the biggest time saver, right? If you are spending time and your transaction management team and agents are spending time taking this information and manually putting it into a bunch of different systems, that's going to not be the most efficient way to do that, right? And so this is the reason this is my favorite part, is because there's so much time to be saved here, and a lot of teams are counting on one single person to understand this entire process and execute this entire process every single time. And so if that one person, I think that's a really important thing to think about, is if that one person were to not come to work the next day for any reason and not tell you, would you be prepared for that? Right. And so you want these systems to be so easy that anybody can quickly be plugged in and do the jobs. And so the way to do that is standardizing your processes. Now, obviously, all of you don't have access to automations like a lot of our clients do. And I do want to give you the framework to do this. So don't be intimidated by my use of the word automation. Because if there is a manual process that needs to take place, then absolutely that needs to take place. But nonetheless, you still have to have that out of your head and written down on paper or in the task lists of your transaction management team, or just in your system in a Google Sheet somewhere, right? And so the goal for this, streamlining the process for agents to submit comprehensive information to the listing management / transaction management for accurate listing and transaction processing. That's the whole goal here, right? We're just getting from A to B. We're getting from listing or buyer signed to under contract. We're getting from under contract to closed, right? Some key tools here. We are huge proponents of form systems, right? That agent handoff of the information from the agent to the admin or transaction management team, form systems are the perfect way to do that. Now, we're slowly accumulating more and more AI technology that's allowing us to, like, we have technology, I think Shay's in here somewhere, to push the documents, like, for example, like a purchase contract and the counter offers into the form and then have it auto-populate onto the form. And so don't be intimidated by that. You still need to standardize your process with the form. I think there's no better way to standardize it than with the form, and then add the bells and whistles on top of it once you understand that process. Because step one is understanding the process and helping your agents easily give that handoff to the transaction management team. Give you a second to take a picture there. And again, keep writing those questions in the chat. Robert, appreciate you for the questions. All right, and the last one is the closing processes. Essentially, the goal here is just to ensure client satisfaction, foster long-term relationships, generate future referrals, right? That is the only thing that needs to happen in the closing processes, other than a little bit of transaction management, right? So a lot of teams forget about this. And once they close, it's on the agent to kind of figure out what it is that they're going to do to keep up with the SOI of that specific agent, right? Or specific client, excuse me. And so if you want to brand your team to where you have a certain level of excellence, there is huge necessity to be able to streamline this process and make it repeatable, right? If you want your clients, you want to know that your clients are having the same excellent experience every single time. Streamlining this process and making sure that there is a checklist or a task list for that agent that they need to do every single time one of their clients close. That's how you hold that standard of excellence and get continued 5-star reviews over and over again, right? Because you know that it's happening every time. And so some examples of this, surveys and client feedback. I know a lot of people, like, I don't whenever a restaurant sends me a survey, I'm not filling it out in most cases. But if somebody that I just walked me through the biggest transaction I ever made in my life, asked me to fill out a survey, I'm filling out that survey, because if they did a good job, I'm going to give them 5 stars. If they didn't do a good job, I'm going to say that they didn't do a good job. And so it's little things like that that really make the client feel heard, and it makes them want to share. These aren't new ideas. This is just, you guys are all aware of this. You guys are all great team leads and operators. I'm just here telling you that streamlining that and making that a repeatable task list that's happening every single time is super important. I guess the handoff of that information is from transaction coordinator and transaction management team, pushing that back into the CRM. And that's where that loop happens of creating that SOI loop, I call it, of turning a cold lead into a forever client that's going to give you forever referrals. Okay. Let's see it in action. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to send this in the chat. I know I emailed this to you guys yesterday, but totally understand if you didn't read my email at like 7 p.m. last night. So let me get this link real quick. Okay. So what this tool is going to do, you're going to type in your team name and your email here. And then it's going to give you directions on how to start building out your tech stack, right? And so again, these are the fundamental building blocks of actually starting your mind map, is the tools and tech and platforms that you're using to do this. So it'll define your 4 business zones, categorizing your tools under communication, automation, execution, documenting triggers and handoffs, and then connecting the dots. So here you can add a tool. So let's do test tool 1. It is a lead intake and follow-up and appointments, and it's for communication and execution. And then you can write handles all leads and helps manage my transactions. And you can add tools here, so you can put in as many as you want. Put in another test here. And so once you have all your tools added, you can go ahead and generate that mind map or the tech stack. And so it's going to show you what exactly you have in lead intake, how many tools you have in each of these. And then you can either download this PDF or share the results with somebody on your team. And it also gives you some links to some web-based mind map creations. And I'll even show you some example in here. So down here, you can view the mind map zones, and this will take you to Lucid, which is the tool that we use to actually build mind maps on our end. And so you can see the different zones, like I was showing you in the presentation, or you can go here to view an example mind map, which is loading too slow for me. There we go. Which will kind of show you the basics of what this looks like, right? What it looks like when tools and handoffs are actually put into the system. And so this is going to be a living, breathing document for you to constantly be changing, constantly working with your director of operations or your lead integrator or whoever it is that is kind of running this and will be in charge of this, and constantly refining the seller side and the buyer side here. And so that both of those are going to be on these 2 buttons here on that tool. So feel free to use that and download the PDF so you can kind of use that as a start for your mind map.